Prabhuji. A very warm welcome to everyone uh, for another webinar by Practical Spirituality. As always, we have with us today an eminent personality who is really focused on applying spiritual wisdom in our modern lives practically. His Grace Mahatma Prabhu. Mahatma Prabhu is a very, very senior member of the ISKCON community, and he's an initiating spiritual master as well. He came in touch with the ISKCON movement at the young age of 19, way back in the year 1969 when the ISKCON movement was just starting. And ever since then, he has done a huge variety of services for the devotee community and for the people in general as well. These services include book distribution, leading Sankirtan, being a president of temples, college preaching, developing various congregations, and many, many educational projects as well. And now all of this has culminated in the work he does nowadays, which is creating workshops and online courses and books um, for devotees as well as for the general public through his company, Sattva. And through this, he practically shows the many ways that Krishna consciousness offers solution to today's challenges and writes and teaches in a way that can be related practically with devotees and also the people in general, and can help all of us to see life as a spiritual practice and a spiritual journey, right? Which, as well, resonates really well with our channel about spirituality practically in our lives. So, the topic for today that Prabhuji is going to take is one that is really essential for each of our spiritual journeys, and one that he is very, very well known for teaching, which is practical tips for improving how we chant the Hare Krishna maha-mantra every day. So we are really, really grateful that Prabhuji took out time from his busy schedule. Thank you very much, Prabhu. And let's get started.
Hare Krishna. Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here and see all of you. And I have some good news for you. We are working on a site, and it's in the development stage. And the site is a support site, which also allows for group interaction. And we have different topics on this site, and we're still in the construction stage of the support section on Japa, but it's workable at this point. So at the end of the class, I'm going to give you the link. And we have a little mini course on Japa you can take. We're going to form groups where we discuss our Japa and improve our Japa. So that's some good news. I wanted to offer that to you. And welcome you all. Nice to see you all. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Tinamane Namaste. Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Paschatya Dasatarine. So, practical spirituality, that's something that I've been teaching pretty much focusing on for about the last 15 years. And in the Vedic process of knowledge, you learn something, you assimilate it, and then you put it into practice. Those are the three stages. And a lot of times we just understand it, and we don't assimilate it, or we understand it and we assimilate it, but we don't put it into practice. A lot of times we don't know how to put it into practice, or we're not able to translate it from theory into, right, well, how do you do that? What is it? I'm supposed to be humble like a blade of grass. What does that look like in practice? I'm supposed to chant humble like a blade of grass. What does that look like in practice? I'm not the body. What does that look like in practice? How do I understand that? So I felt that was really important, and so I began teaching that. So today I was asked to take the more practical side of Japa. And one thing I would like to say in doing this, you've heard a lot of Japa classes. You're going to hear a lot more. And as Mahaprabhu says, there's no hard and fast rule. What we find is what works for one person doesn't always exactly work for everyone in the same way. So what I offer you are ideas which you can try. I don't want to offer them as absolutes, because that's not what Mahaprabhu said. No hard and fast rule means, it means many things. But like sometimes devotees say, well, should I sit down or should I stand up when I chant? Is it okay to walk? Do I have to chant in the morning? Can I chant later? These questions, uh, these will vary with different people as to what works. And my philosophy is always what works best for you, do it. And I will offer you today some of the things that I've learned from my own practice and also learned from teaching, because I have the fortune of not only being able to try to improve my own japa, but to help other people improve their japa. And by doing that, my japa improves. The teacher is the one who always benefits the most. That's just the way it is. And so I've also had the fortune to be able to facilitate japa workshops with Sachinandan Swami, also Indradumna Swami, Rabindra Swarup, Giriraj Swami. And so that has helped me tremendously also in learning from these great devotees. So we're going to offer some practical tips, which you should be able to apply immediately if you choose to, and you should see noticeable difference in your japa. At least this is my hope. And many of these things are things that I do, things that I've realized, things that have worked for other devotees. And I want to start right in the beginning. When we do japa workshops, the number one question as you could probably imagine is, how do I control my mind when I chant japa? Because the number one problem seems to be, I'm meditating, but I'm not meditating. I'm chanting Hare Krishna. I'm supposed to be meditating on Krishna, feeling Krishna's presence, thinking of his form, his pastimes, at least hearing, being absorbed, and I'm thinking about so many other things. Now, what are we thinking about? Well, we're thinking about, what do I have to do today? Or we're thinking about, my leg hurts, or I'm tired, or I'm bored, or I don't like what happened in the temple yesterday, or I have these bills to pay and I don't have enough money, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And, it's just, that's why we think that way, is because that's the way the mind works. And what psychologists have told us is, even though the mind has 30, 40, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 thoughts a day, there's different figures, but it's in the tens of thousands. Minimum I've read was 35. Most people are like 50, 60,000 thoughts a day. But the interesting thing about it is, they say of all those thoughts, we usually have, of the 30, 40, 50,000 thoughts, it's basically 300 of the same thoughts just going around. And if you look at your mind, you'll see that the things that disturb you the most, the things that you're worried about the most, they tend to circle in your mind, and they keep coming around. It's interesting, isn't it? You're like 60,000 thoughts. Do you actually think 60,000 different things in a day? That would probably be difficult, wouldn't it? So we're not thinking of 60,000 things. Think about what you worry about. Think about some of the things you worry about. I bet you were worried about them last year, and I bet you worried about them every day since last year, or last 5 or 10. Isn't it? For some things? Yes? Mothers, you worry about your kids, and you're going to worry about your kids your whole life, even when they're adults. That's just the way it is. So it's going to, as soon as you have a kid, that thought is, my kid okay? Is everything all right? How can I help them? That's going to be recycling in your mind. It's natural. You start a business, you get a job. What's going on in my business? What's going on in my work? How's it going? What do I have to do? That's just going to be always going on. You're buying a new house. How's it going to go? How are we going to afford it? It's natural. We're thinking like this. So the problem that I see is, when devotees start japa, they haven't made any shift internally. So what's happening is, they begin to chant, and their mind is in that state which it's always in, which is just recycling these 300 thoughts, which are worries, concerns, things that disturb them. And then they begin to chant, and they're totally in the wrong space. They're totally in the wrong mood for chanting. We have to shift into another mood. And I call it the meditator's mood, because from experience, I realize that for many of us, It takes us like 8 rounds to get in that mood. We're chanting, chanting, getting purified. And the devotee says, oh yeah, by the 8th round, I calmed down. I could actually hear. And I thought, well, that's a waste of 8 rounds. If you have to chant 8 rounds to get to 0, we should do something about that. Why can't we get to 0 on the first bead? So, and you can, and I want to try to help you to the first bead rather than the 8th or the 4th and some devotees will say, oh, Prabhu, the 8th, sometimes I'm at the 16th and I haven't even calmed down. And that's a shame, because then we're not able to access the full power of the holy name, because we have not harnessed our mind. So I want to talk about something. I'm going to talk about a few things we can do that will make it easy for us to do this if we just make some shifts. And one of the most powerful things I have seen in my japa to help me control my mind is learning what I call unplugging. And you can call it turning your life off, turning the switches of your life off, unplugging your life. And I often tell devotees who ask, how do you control your mind when you're chanting? I say, find that plug to turn your mind off. Or pull out the plug, or just find the switch. Do you know where that switch is? Where you can just go, and now I Hare Krishna, and I'm totally absorbed. Where's that switch that you can just do that? And the funny thing is, you're all thinking, I don't know where that switch is, but you do know, because the funny thing is, we use that switch all the time, right? If you have a child and the child's hurt, where is your mind at that moment? It's totally on the pain of that child and how to relieve it, right? If you have a final exam tomorrow, where's your mind right now? It's focused on that exam. Where's your mind today? It's totally focused on it. You can't think of anything else. You can't be distracted. I was once on an airplane in India, and I sat next to this man. He was on the airplane before I got on, and he was reading the newspaper. He didn't lift his head up from the newspaper the whole flight. It probably wasn't that long, hour or two. And when we landed, he was still reading the newspaper, and I was joking to myself in my mind. I said, if the plane actually crashed, he probably wouldn't even notice. He'd probably still be reading his newspaper right to the last end. And we've all seen this. When you're reading a book and you're absorbed, when you're watching a movie and you're absorbed, when you're with a friend and you're talking, you're absorbed. It's like the world doesn't exist. What to speak of when a boy and girl fall in love? The only thing in the world is them. That nothing else exists. It's just they're so absorbed. So my point of giving these examples is that we all have that switch. We all do it. We have to do it to survive in this world. We have to be able to turn switches of our life off and turn the switch on for what we're doing at that moment. If you're a brain surgeon, if you're a heart surgeon, you have to be able to turn every switch off and go into surgery focused solely on your job, isn't it? That means we have that capability to do that. And so what I found in my chanting of japa, this one thing will make, it's hard to say this because you could say there's so many things that will help your japa. But to me, this one thing is the foundation, the best foundation I have found for controlling the mind. It's just, if I can turn my world off, then there's nothing to occupy my mind. And when we always say, but my mind, that's because it's still on. It's still running. And if you turn that switch off, you wouldn't say my mind. You'd say, oh, this was the best job I ever had. I was just hearing the holy name. Because your mind's off, so it's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to think of. So let me explain this concept. If you're chanting and your mind's going all over the place, that's because you've allowed it to it. You have it engaged. The gears are running. You've got it going. And so when you began chanting, you didn't turn it off. So you can't really complain that your mind is going everywhere because you didn't turn it off. You allowed it to be engaged. You didn't make any shift. What I like to say is that we should condition ourselves that when we put our hand in our bead bag, there's a shift in our consciousness, which says to us subconsciously or consciously, I'm chanting japa now. Everything has to change. Everything has to shift. If we can get to that point where we condition ourselves that, okay, I'm chanting japa, mind, shut down, life, shut down. And we'll talk more about how to develop the right moods a little after this. But this is the first point. This is what we want to develop. If you can develop this ability to find that switch and just click it off, you will find it's so easy to chant. It's so easy to hear because there's no distraction. There's nothing getting in the way. Oh, I have to do this. Maybe I should stop chanting. Oh, this is boring. Oh, what about that? I forgot to do that. Oh, this message, I forgot to answer it. It won't be there because you've turned it off. And all your messages will be there later when you finish your rounds. I will make a solemn vow to you. You don't have to think about all your messages because when you finish your japa, they're still going to be there. And you don't even have to think about your problems when you chant japa, because when you finish chanting japa, they're probably still going to be there. If you chant good rounds, they may not be there anymore, but that's good. And everything that you need to think about, it's all going to be there when you finish chanting japa, and you don't need to think about it. What you need to do during japa is connect with Krishna. So if you can learn how to do that before you begin chanting japa and practice it every day, then the hope is that at some point, as soon as you touch your first bead, it automatically happens. And you are there present with the holy name on the first mantra, not the 8th, not the 4th, not the 12th. Wouldn't that be good if you could do that? Wouldn't that be good if the first mantra, you're there, you're present totally? Wouldn't that be amazing? And I think that should be our standard. So now you're thinking, some of you are thinking, but how do you turn your mind off? And I say, well, when you watch a movie, how did you do it? How did you turn? You're not thinking about anything else. You are completely mesmerized by that movie. You like the guy in the airplane. The world could blow up. You're watching your movie. You're like, oh, did something happen? Isn't it like that? The guy watching a sport event, there's an earthquake, and he's like, everyone's screaming. He's like, oh, did something happen? Oh, forget it. And he just goes back to his sporting event. So we know how to do this. You're sitting down reading the book. You're on Facebook. You're on Twitter, Instagram, something, and you're just absorbed. You know how to do this. So I'm going to kind of leave it to you to figure this out, but I want you to understand that this is going to make a huge difference in your japa. If you just, when you sit down to chant, there's this consciousness that comes over you that says, I'm chanting japa now, and there is nothing else. There's nothing, during japa, nothing else goes on. I think HK can, someone mute HK? I can't mute HK. I'm not in charge here. HK, can you mute yourself? Anybody who's not muted, can you mute yourself? Thank you. We're hearing something. So how do we do this? We understand that we have to do this. This is what it means to chant. This is so important because I think what I've learned from teaching japa is that a lot of devotees, they're just given beads and say, well, here's the head bead, and you just chant, and when you don't chant on the head bead, and then you go around, and that's like all they're taught. They're not really taught that chanting means you have to shift consciousness. So if you understand this principle, that when I chant japa, it's just like I'm talking to a friend. The friend's coming over, we have an appointment, we're going to do something, or if the friend has a problem, we're going to talk. You have turned everything off. The friend comes over, and you just sit down and say, tell me. Or as they say in India, tell me. What? You walk into the shop, and they say, tell me. Is that it? Vijay Lakshmi, is that right? Is that what they say? Tell me. So your friend comes over, and you say, tell me. Sit down, tell me. And you're totally there. You're completely present. because that's what you have to do. That's what's right for the relationship. And you've probably heard lectures where devotees say, if we're not hearing the holy name, it's like we're ignoring Krishna. And it's true. So if you understand this principle, that when I chant, I'm supposed to give my attention to Krishna, who's a person who's personally appearing in his holy name, then you naturally think, okay, I have to figure this out. I have to be able to do this. How am I going to do this? I have to figure it out. I have to be able to do it. And you, just like you made room for your friend to listen to them, you can do this. But I think it's important. I think the problem is we don't do it because we don't understand this is what we need to do. We don't understand that chanting japa is not, you just pick up your beads and Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. That's not japa. That is like the worst thing you can do. I mean, imagine you did that to your friend when she came over and she was talking to you and you're like, la-di-da-da-da-da-da, looking around and, slouching over. I took a class in empathic listening, and you know what they said? They said, when you do empathic listening, you have to sit like this. You have to sit up straight and lean forward and listen. Isn't that interesting? Sit up, lean forward and listen. Give that person and look at them and give your attention. So we have to do the same thing with the holy name. We have to lean forward and give the holy name attention. And I know you can all do that. And so I'm suggesting that you once you understand that this is what it means to chant japa, that other stuff we do, shnick, shnick, ram, ram, and walking around and spacing out, that's not actually what japa is about. It's not what it means. Prabhupada says chant 16 rounds, and some devotees are thinking, oh, I just have to, pull 16 counter beads down, 108 times 16, and I'm good to go back to Godhead. No, nothing in the world can be done haphazardly. Everything, go to university for 4 years and you'll get a degree. Yeah, if you study, if you pass your exams, you will, but not just that you hang out on the campus. Well, I went, I failed all my classes, but I went to, when I was on the campus. Did you go to class? No. Did you do the work? No, but I was on campus. I mean, my parents said, go to college for 4 years. That's what I did. I went to campus every day. I walked around, talked to my friends. It's something like that. Well, I chanted 16 rounds. Well, what kind of rounds were they? At least I got them done. So when you understand that japa is a relationship, and that a relationship requires that you have to stop everything to pay attention to that relationship, then it's much easier to do this. And then you understand, okay, this is japa. When I chant japa, this is what I do. I turn off the world as far as possible. I know if you're a mother, you have kids, that's not so easy. But sometimes you just take the kids and you go to your husband and you say, here, they're yours. I'm going to chant japa. See you later. And you just do it, And he's like, what are you doing? You say, I'll be back in an hour. You can manage. I do this for 23. You can do it for 1. No problem. Of course, you probably want to talk to him before you do that, so he doesn't have a heart attack. But this is the idea. It's about creating environment. So what is the environment that I need to create where I can be totally absorbed and turn off everything and be able to chant? We have to understand that as a principle, as a foundational principle. And then once you understand it, you're going to find it much easier to do, because this is what I need to do. I need to figure out how, when I chant, I can get that switch in my head, turn it off. It goes off. The mind goes off. So I always want to reiterate this point once more, because when I do this, I'm so amazed at how easy it is to hear, because my mind actually is not thinking about what I have to do because I turned it off. So I just want to reiterate this point, because I'm not sure it was clear. The point I made a little earlier was, if your mind is going, it's because you're allowing it to go. It's because you're still in your life. You're still thinking about what you have to do. You're still thinking about all these things. And therefore, you've given permission to your mind to continue the normal thinking process, the normal absorption. I have to do this, to do that. What about this? What about that? What about this service I want to do? What about this point of philosophy? All that, we don't want that. We want to be absorbed just in the holy name. And so whenever your mind is going like that, the first thought is, okay, stop, wait, did I turn my mind off or not? And you realize, no, I didn't. Of course, sometimes it turns back on. But generally, if in the beginning we turn it off, it's much easier to stay off if we actually have it off. And because as you chant, you go more deeply into your chanting. And it's so amazing that you don't want to leave that space. And you realize this is what chanting is. I left my space. Now, there's something really interesting. When we did our retreats, we would go up into the mountains somewhere and do these retreats. And these places were pretty far from where we lived. And Satchidananda Swami said, I think he said, or I read, when you do a retreat, it has to be a minimum 6 hours from where you live. To do, this is like a tradition. If we're all going to go on a retreat, it should at least be 6 hours. Because when you get 6 hours away from where you live, you kind of disassociate from your life there, and it's a new position. So now you're at the retreat, and you're pretty far from your life. You can't really just drive home in a half hour. And so it frees your mind up. So now when people do retreats, they say, oh, my japa was so much better. Well, that's one of the major reasons it was so much better, aside from the fact that you're hearing about the holy name and you're with devotees. But the foundational reason is you're out of your life now. So retreats are meant to take people out of their life. So they're disconnected, so now that they can focus on what they have to do. Same thing when you go to India, you go to the Holy Dham. Your life is back in America. Your life is back in Europe. Your life is back in Canada, South America, Africa. Now you're in India. You're in the Dham. Or you live in India and you go to the Dham. You've left your life somewhere else, and now your mind's free. And it's not thinking so much about what you have to do. It's thinking more about the holy name. Any of you have that experience? When you go away somewhere, it's easier to chant. You go to Vrindavan, you go to Mayapur. So that's the idea. When you chant, you kind of have to leave your life behind. And once you do that, the mind it shuts down because you haven't given it permission any longer to be active. And it's got nothing to think about now because you turned it off. I know that sounds simple and you're thinking, I don't know, that easy? I don't want to say it's that easy, but I do want to say that's what happens. That's what happens all the time. We turn our minds off unconsciously. So you can do that. And I think this should make sense to you, that when your mind's turned off, why is it going to be thinking? You're over in Vrindavan and you're on parikrama and at Govardhan. Why would you be thinking about what's going on in your house 5,000 miles away? You won't. It's unnatural. And that's why when you're there, you can be totally absorbed. Until you get the phone call, your house is burning down and everything you own is gone. And they're like, now you're thinking of your house. But in the normal course of events, once you leave that, you won't. So that's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do. Before you begin chanting, you're going to try to say, okay, you're like telling yourself, now I'm chanting. So switch, wherever that switch is, turn it off. World, you just sink down. You're going, I'm setting you aside so that I can chant Krishna's name. That's it. And sometimes, like for myself, on a practical level, if I have to do that and there's a lot going on in my house, because our house is not that big, so wherever I sit in the house, I could hear people talking. Sometimes I'll just go outside or I'll go for a walk so I can create the environment. So sometimes you can get the switch off, but you're in an environment that keeps clicking the switch back on, like other people are turning your switch on. They're distracting you. So sometimes you'll have to find that environment which is conducive. So that's an important practice of japa. What we talked about was creating that internal environment, but sometimes you'll have to create that external. You'll have to make sure that that external environment, as far as you can control, as far as possible, is not disturbing you. Okay, so that's one principle. If you get this, you ever heard the saying 90% of success is showing up? Have you ever heard that? I think that's a Hollywood saying. Is it? I don't know if anybody's from Hollywood, they must have heard it. But I grew up near Hollywood, so 90% of success is showing up. My experience with japa is kind of like, it's something like that. It's like, if you can do this, it's pretty much like you're going to be successful. It's like you're already there, because now there's no distraction. There's nothing. It's just your mind is off and your atmosphere is conducive. When you start chanting, immediately you notice, whoa, I'm hearing, I'm absorbed. Why am I hearing and absorbed? There's nothing, my life is not, I don't need to be in my life anymore. There's nothing going on there. When you do this, you know what's going to happen? The switch has its own auto lever. It turns itself back on because we're so used to those 300 thoughts recycling that sometimes when you turn them off, you think, uh-oh, I'm not thinking those things. I have to start thinking those things I'm so used to. So you may have to practice turning that switch off, because sometimes it just flicks back on because we're so used to it. Okay, so that's point number one. And I think the plan is I go another 15 minutes, right? And then we take questions. I'll get to the questions, yeah. You can ask your questions now, and I'll do one more point I want to do, one or two more points, and then I'll take your questions. So, now the next thing I saw was, which was a problem, which is very similar to this problem, is that when devotees began chanting, they weren't in the mood for japa, or they weren't, I don't want to say they weren't in the mood for japa, they weren't in the mood of japa. It's like, your mind's in a certain frame set to do certain things, right? If you're going to go play a sport, if you're going to go on stage and perform, that's like a different mindset than if you're going to go sit down and read a book, or you're going to go sit down and cook a meal. No, you don't sit down and cook. Well, in India they do. You're going to cook a meal, or you're going to take prasadam. It's a different mindset, right? Or you're going to talk to your husband. It's a different mindset. You're going to go to work. It's a different mindset. And another problem I see is that devotees, when they begin chanting, they don't switch into the mindset that's required. And there are many meanings to the holy name. And the mindset is to get into to that frequency of what the holy name means, and get into the frequency of understanding, right now I'm praying to Krishna for pure bhakti. I'm praying to Krishna to help me overcome my anarthas. I'm praying to Krishna to purify my heart. I'm praying for so many things. So prayer is a mindset, isn't it? Like if I say, Vijay Lakshmi, go in the temple and pray. So she gets in her car, goes to the temple, walks in. And as soon as she walks into the temple, there's a mindset switch. I'm in a temple. There are the deities. There's the Murti of Prabhupada. It's just, we all go through that mindset switch as soon as we walk in the temple, isn't it? And the bigger the temple, the more beautiful and opulent, kind of more the mind switch. Oh, I'm in a temple. You walk into Mayapur temple, and it's like 3,000 devotees at Mangalarti. It's like, oh, okay. And there's big Panchatattva. There's a shift there. So a lot of times when we chant japa, we don't make that shift in mood. And so there's a mood, which is, it's to enter the mood of prayer, just like you would make that shift when you walk in a temple. So there are many moods that accompany japa, and I don't want to be here to say there's only one mood and this is the mood you should have. But we know some of the things that Prabhupada said. Krishna, please engage me in your service. God, please don't engage me in Maya's service. Krishna, please accept me. I want to be your devotee. Accept me. I'm coming to you. Forgive me for all the offenses I've ever made. Forgive me for leaving you. Please accept me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Please let me always be eternally your servant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Please, Krishna, Prabhupada said, Krishna, oh, my friend, my friend. Hare Krishna, Hare, my friend, and bring my heart to you, my friend. Uh, Make me qualified to serve you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. These are all meanings. So when we begin japa, there should be a little bit of a switch of mood. I created a book called Japa Affirmations. It's on Amazon. You just type in Mahatma Das Amazon, or just type in Japa Affirmations. You can download that book. I think you can even order a hard copy in some countries. And so maybe Jairati, are you here? Somebody's here, or Vijay Lakshmi. If you could put the link up for that. This book, Jairati's here. This book, Japa Affirmations, what it was meant to create that mood, that so that when you chant japa, you're like in the right mood. It was just like, you see like sports stars or people who perform, they, before they perform, they have to like be in this mood. Otherwise it doesn't work. Sports people they get in this aggressive mood, like we're going to win. They can't walk out to the field shy and uncertain of themselves. They may have that nature, they may be shy people, but when they go to play the game, or many speakers are actually shy, but they go out on the stage and they're like, they're huge, bigger than life, and that's what has to be done. So these moods in this book, if you like, you can get this book and it can help you. That was the idea, create these moods through affirmations. How I should be feeling, how I should be thinking, how I should be approaching the name. So that when I begin chanting, I'm in this optimal state for having a good japa session. So I've turned my world off. There's nothing going on in my mind. My mind is now clear. I'm with Krishna. And then I've created this mood, this like, what am I doing here? What is the meaning of the holy name? What am I connecting to? What am I praying for? And then I begin chanting, and it's an amazing experience. Just those two things can shift you tremendously. Just those two things. And I want to say one more thing, and if these were the only three things I could ever tell devotees about how to improve japa, these would be the three things. And I want to tell a story. Some of you have heard this story, and it's an amazing story. One time, there was a group. I'll make this story really short. It was a long story made short. There was a professional group chanting Hare Krishna. And professionals chant for money. They get paid. You invite them to weddings, funerals, events, and they'll chant Hare Krishna. And they were chanting at Mayapur. And Prabhupada said, they were chanting the maha-mantra, and Prabhupada said, they're not chanting the maha-mantra. And everybody's thinking, well, I hear the maha-mantra. I don't know. What is Prabhupada? You know what Prabhupada heard them chanting? It came out maha-mantra, but Prabhupada heard money, money, money. So what was the message? And Prabhupada saying, it's the mood behind the mantra. That's what you're chanting. So if the mood behind the mantra is money, 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 it comes out as Hare Krishna, but what are you actually asking for? So don't just think, if I just chant Hare Krishna, that's it. But there's more. There's more. It's what am I asking Krishna for? That actually becomes the meaning of the mantra, which is so interesting because Prabhupada says the meaning is, Krishna, please engage me in your service, or Krishna, please accept me. So many meanings. But what's the meaning for the Mayavadis when they chant Hare Krishna? Krishna, make me one with you. So even though they're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, it's a different mantra for them because they're putting a different meaning. So ask yourself when you're chanting, well, what's my meaning? What's going on here? Right? And because you could be chanting Hare Krishna and thinking, oh, Krishna, husband, I need a husband. Or I need a new husband. Trade this guy in, he's a bum. Instead of pure bhakti. I need more money. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Money, money, money. So what are you chanting? You're chanting money. It just sounds like you're chanting Hare Krishna. So we ask ourselves, what am I really trying to achieve here? What's actually going on? And we monitor ourselves and we understand it's not that I'm just chanting Hare Krishna and that's it. And everything is good. It's not just a mechanistic process, but it requires your intention is everything. Okay, so now it's time for questions. I'm going to go back to the top
Um,
and see.
Prabhu, if you like, I can filter out the questions and put them to you. Maybe that would be
Okay,
easier.
okay. Yeah, sure. Filter them out. Shh.
Yeah. So, one question that I can see is it okay to listen to Srila Prabhupada chanting or to listen to Kirtan during our chanting to control our mind? Um,
Yeah, Prabhupada chanting japa. Prabhupada said, if you're listening to kirtan, it's redundant. Like, you're already chanting Hare Krishna. So either do kirtan or chant japa, but not both together. But if you like, you can hear Prabhupada chanting japa. If that helps you, it's not mandatory, but if it helps you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Should I take the next question?
Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah. So, another question is sometimes when you're chanting, all the things that have hurt you come into your mind and they make you feel angry, and you have to leave your japa until you calm down.
Yeah.
How to not let these things become obstacles?
Ah, you have 6 hours, I can tell you. Um, one thing I would say, I think it plays into what I'm saying. If you're trying to create the meditator's mood, the right mood to enter japa, then you're going to have to process that anger. Because if you don't, that's all you're going to be thinking about when you chant japa. And it's kind of like you've just ruined your japa. I'm sure so many of you have experience of what we could call ruining my japa. You finish your rounds and you feel like, I didn't really even chant. I just kind of ruined it in thinking of so many things, or being upset about so many things, or not being in the proper mood to chant. And it almost felt like I didn't chant. So I think the best advice I could give, because that's a complicated question, because there'd be so many reasons why you're upset and so many ways to deal with it. And so much you could ask yourself. But at least number one answer is you have to get yourself in the right state to chant. And if you chant in that state, it's if that's all you can do and you don't have any other time, then you have to do it. But it's ideally, you have to get yourself in that state. I can say one little thing about anger. Every emotion, generally every emotion we're having that's in response to a situation, we're responding to a situation according to the story we put on the situation. Just like, let's say, you asked your husband or your wife to do something and they didn't do it, and you were counting on them doing it, and you're really upset when they come back and you think, oh, they don't love me, or they don't listen to me, or they disrespect me. That's your story, right? Is there another story? Could there be some other story? Yeah, like their car broke down, or they had to stay late at work, or they're sick, or there was an emergency and they had to run out. It could be so many other reasons. So sometimes when we're upset, we just ask ourselves, what else could this mean? My husband said this and that. What else could it mean? He probably maybe he got yelled at by his boss today, or maybe, something just really upset him because of something in the past that happened, and it's happening again, and right now he's really upset. Yeah, there could be so many other reasons. So sometimes we just have to ask ourselves the question, I'm disturbed by this. Could it mean anything else? Or just ask ourselves, why am I allowing myself to get disturbed? And understanding I could be totally ruining my japa today, but unless I let this go or process it in some way. One thing more I could say on this, which is it's interesting, and this is not generally spoken about, although it's implied in our philosophy, but it's what I call emotional detachment. Detachment, we're always talking about detachment from things which are more obvious, like my lust, my greed, my anger, things which are just my possessions, my body. But what about these things, these little things, like I'm feeling this emotion now, and it's very toxic, and it's getting in the way of my japa. Can I let that go? Can I see this emotion like I'm just holding on to it and just drop it? Because that's all you're doing. You are not your emotion, you're just holding on to it. And you can actually let it go. Because you, as the soul, are experiencing an emotion, just like you experience a thought, then the thought becomes a feeling, it becomes an emotion. You can let go of the thought, you can let go of the emotion. It's harder to let go of the emotion than the thought, but you can do it. For the sake of the sanctity of your japa, you could practice letting go. And you just ask yourself, am I willing to let go of this right now to chant japa? Can I do that? And you actually can. In many cases, if you practice that, you just tell yourself, okay, let's just let this go. This is not serving me. Let's drop it. So that's the short answer to the 6-hour seminar on how to control your emotions. I probably have something on my website about it, controlling emotions, somewhere.
Thank you, bro.
In fact, not somewhere. I definitely have given classes on this. Okay, next question.
So there are a couple of related questions around that we have taste for listening to classes or listening Hari Katha, but we don't have similar taste in chanting, or we can't motivate ourselves to chant.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. What to
what should we
do?
do about it? Yeah.
You should read every book you can get your hands on how to improve japa and listen to every lecture you can. I think part of the problem, as I've observed it, is we don't understand how important japa is, and we don't understand how powerful it is. Because if we're not chanting good japa, you don't get the experience of how powerful it is and how important it is. And so it's kind of like a vicious cycle. If you have, like you say, attraction for hearing Bhagavatam, but you don't have attraction for chanting, you generally won't experience a lot when you're chanting. You might even get bored chanting. And when you don't experience it, it's like reinforces that, oh, I don't like chanting, but I like hearing. Or I don't like chanting japa, I like kirtan. And so the more you say I like kirtan, the more you say I like hearing, and the more you say I don't like japa, it like reinforces that. And it becomes like your permanent reality, and that you don't get the experience of what good japa is like. And without that experience, it's going to be hard to break that cycle. So I would say do everything you can to be able to inspire good japa, because you need that experience, because that experience will break this problem. But without that experience, you're just caught in a vicious cycle. You don't like it, you chant more, you don't like it, that reinforces how much you don't like it. It's just a chore, it's a botheration, it becomes a ritual, when actually it's the most sacred connection you can have with Krishna. It's a beautiful, beautiful relationship where you can open your heart to Krishna every day and you can be with Krishna. And that's what you want to open yourself up to, that beauty. A lot of devotees say, I like kirtan, but I don't like japa. And I always say, but japa, it's just you and Krishna. There's nobody else. It's even you're chanting with a whole group of devotees, but it's just you and Krishna. Kirtan, it's like so social. You're dancing together. Everything's interactive. And japa, it's so beautiful. It's like you just locked up in a room with Krishna. So we have to reframe it uh, and appreciate what it is and appreciate what we can get from it. And then we'll be okay. That's the way I see it.
Thank you, bro. Um, it was wonderful to know about unplugging the mind. So,
Yes.
but can you please explain a little more, or like give some practical tip about how we can do it?
Yeah. I have a picture. I'm not sure if I can find it. If I find the picture, I'm not. Anyway, forget the picture. It's a picture, It's a picture of a devotee, and he's got cords from his body. And cord is like, what do I have to do today? What am I worried about? My service, my job, my family. He's got all these cords, right? And so the visual is the next scene is he's pulling the cords out. Okay, all these things in my life I have to pull out. And I think the practical way to do it is not as important as understanding the necessity of doing it, because when you understand, if it's I think the way we could I could answer this question the way we understand it is this is how japa is done. If you don't do it this way, it's not. I don't want to say it's not japa because I can't say that, but I'm going to say it anyway because I think if I say it, you'll get the message better. This is not japa if you don't do it that way. It's what you're doing is not. It's not japa in the sense it's not the way it's supposed to be done. Like, you ever seen somebody do something and you know how to do it really well and they're not doing it well, and you go up to them and you say, no, you don't do it like that. You do it. You got to move your hand this way and turn this. This is how it's done. And they say, leave me alone. I'll do it. I'm doing it just fine the way I want to do it. So we can't say they're not doing it, but they're just doing it wrong. So I think we need to understand that. This is not the way. You don't chant japa by just having your mind completely absorbed in what you have to do. You chant japa by freeing your mind so now you can be present with Krishna totally. And if you understand that deeply and say, this is what japa is, it's not this other thing, and creating the japa, that mood before I chant japa, this is what japa is. This is what it means. Once you understand those two things, it's going to be much easier to do that, because then you realize, well, if I don't do that, it's not really what japa is about. It's not just shnik, shnik, ram, ram. Oh, I got 16 rounds done, Haribo, where are the pakoras? That's not what it's about. It's about doing it properly. That's what is. So that's what I think will help us, is just understanding this is what japa is. That other thing is not. And you'll figure out how to do it, because you have to do it, because that's what it is. Like, if you want to talk to your husband, or your husband want to talk to your wife about something important, you expect them to be present, to listen, to understand, because that's what conversation is. You don't expect them to not pay attention to you and just be, falling asleep while you're talking to them. So it's the same thing with japa. It's a conversation, and there's protocol for conversation, and that's the protocol. Turn off your life, give attention, and be in the mood so you can hear, so you can listen. So we're just saying, turn off your life and be in the mood so you can chant. I hope that helps. You're the one who's going to you're going to be the best one to do it, to figure it out.
Thank you, bro.
Krishna will give you intelligence how to do it, if the desire's there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, there's a couple of related questions around. One is that I'm able to chant japa only if I wake up early, and if
Yes.
I can't, then somehow I'm not able to get the determination to finish my rounds in the rest of the day.
Yes. Yes.
And another similar question somewhat is that if for some reason we are not able to complete our rounds in the day, is it okay to complete in later days? And
Yes. Yes. Okay.
so around that area.
Okay, so the answer to the second question is yes. Prabhupada said, if you don't complete, finish on the next day. The first question, I can tell you what I do in situations like that. I get in my car. Well, where I live in an interesting place, because if I drive 3 miles that way, there's a state park where I can walk. It's like thousands of acres. And if I drive 3 miles that way, there's another state park. And this other state park, you could actually walk. Like, if you walk the whole park, it'd probably take you 3 or 4 hours. So if it's so bad, well, I just can't get my rounds done for whatever reason, I'm too disturbed, too much going on, I'll just get in the car, go to that park, and let's say I had no rounds done, I would just walk, because you can walk really far in this park. I would walk 8 rounds, then I'd turn around. And so by the time I get out of the park, there's 16. I just like paint myself into a 16 round corner. I have to, if I just walk 8 rounds, It's pretty much guaranteed I'll get 16 done. And I'm in a forest, so I don't bring my phone. There's nothing. So it's kind of like when you're just not there and there's not the mood. You have to do something to try to create the mood. That works for me. That may not work for you. Maybe for you it might be that you have to read something, read Leela or read about chanting. You have to do something to create the mood. But creating the mood is really important. I mean, sometimes I've chanted amazingly good rounds in a really bad environments. That does happen. But I generally, when I'm in that situation, sometimes I get very busy also. Like this morning, I had a class before your class. And it was on a topic that I needed to study a little bit before I gave it. So I was up at like 3 in the morning studying. Then I came and gave the class. Now I'm giving this class. After this class ends, I have a meeting. I'm not sure how long it lasts. And then I have a class at 11. So how many rounds am I going to get done before I finish my class at 11, which will end at 12:30? I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. So it's a reality. Your question you're asking is now a practical reality for me today. So you know what I'm going to do today. You know, you will, if you want to meet me today, you're going to see me in one of those parks. If you're in Alachua or Gainesville, if you go to one of those parks, I'll be there. I have to go there. That's because, if I sit around the house everybody's busy, they're talking. If I sit in my office, a million things to do. So that's what I do personally, find that spot. And, you're saying, but I don't have a park to go. I live in Delhi. All right, well, there must be a park somewhere in Delhi. Or just walk down the street. Sometimes you have to get out of your house because people will bother you. You have to do something. One time I locked myself in a closet because I knew my family was going to bother me. So I just went in the closet. They had no idea where I was. And I finished my rounds in the closet. And they're like, where were you? We were looking for you. Oh, I was in the closet. You're not going to look for me in a closet, right? So I did something drastic that day because I wanted to chant. So I'll have to leave it up to you to figure out how, it's like, I don't want to chant, the wrong environment. Okay, shift it. Get out of that environment to get into another mood. Or somehow or shift your consciousness. That's another practice you could try. Shifting your consciousness. Like, no, I'm going to shift. I'm going to do this now. We're going to make this happen. I have to make this happen. We have to learn that because we have to chant 16 good rounds a day. So we have to learn how to do whatever is necessary to be able to do that. And you can make shifts in consciousness. Sometimes you can fake yourself out. You go, I'm going to chant. I love to chant. This is fantastic. I can't wait to chant. And you don't really want to chant. And you're telling yourself, I want to chant. Sometimes that will shift you, believe it or not. So I would just say, I leave it up to you to figure out how to do it. Sometimes I answer questions and I always say, I leave it up to you. You know why? Because you have super soul. You have super soul within you. So anything else?
Um, just one last question, maybe.
Okay.
Um, someone is asking that some psychologists or doctors outside, they say that you can pray every day for like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and that's enough. Why why do we chant 16 rounds, which takes about a couple of hours every day?
I can give you an answer I like. It's from a Buddhist teacher. And this Buddhist teacher had an American disciple, and he had him chant mantras like, hours and hours a day. So he said, why do we have to chant so many mantras? Thousands and thousands of mantras. He said, for thousands and thousands of lives, you've been chanting thousands and thousands of mantras. Give me more. I'm the best. Let me enjoy. I'm number one. You're my competitor. Get out of the way. You've been chanting thousands of those mantras. So, we have to catch up with purify all those mantras. So we have to keep chanting. It's true. It's kind of funny. But the answer that Prabhupada gave us is because this is what Mahaprabhu did, and Mahaprabhu set the example. So we follow the example of the acharyas. This is the process. This is what the acharyas did. And so Prabhupada said 16 at least. This is what you're going to need. Prayer is good. 2 minutes of prayer and then 23 hours and 58 minutes of of material activity and 2 minutes of prayer, the odds are against you that you're going to succeed in that environment. So Prabhupada said at least 16. So we figure at least 16, that's a significant part of our day. And that's a powerful mantra, and that's going to work. And the Hare Krishna mantra is very powerful. So, ultimately, it's because Prabhupada said chant 16 that we try to get to that someday. If you're not there yet, we try to get there. Because he said that's the magic number. And so he's the Acharya, we follow him. Previous Acharyas have chanted 16, 32, 64, 192, Takaharidas, or 128, or 192, whatever it was. So we're following their example. So I've studied a lot of psychologists, and I've found a lot of psychologists are amazing, but they're really bad with spiritual life. But they're really good with the mind. I mean, they really know good stuff to help you deal with your mind, your emotions, get things done, be focused, disciplined. You can find some amazing things. But I found that when they come to the spiritual level, they either just are pretty empty, or they don't really know what they're talking about. It's kind of like it's not their forte. They heard something, they read something, they got some ideas here or there. So I don't think we should take spiritual advice from psychologists personally. Unless they're very advanced spiritually. That's my experience. So, what do we do now?
Thank
Celebrate?
you.
Oh, I have to give you my link. I'm going to put it in the chat. Hold on a second. This is a link. We've created a site where we support devotees in different aspects of their bhakti. And this is the link for part of that site where you can get your support. Did it go up? Where you can get support for your japa. Did it go up?
Not yet, Prabhu.
Let's try it again. Oh, it went to Priyanka. It didn't go to everybody. Everyone. Okay, let's try this. Why does it? Yeah, there's a link. Was to my book, and yeah, you see that? Members, devotee support, and there's some instructions. And so many things that I have taught about japa and lectures, and then this little mini workshop, it's all up there. So
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you for taking out time from your really busy schedule, as you already said, right? You have so many classes today, and
it's
giving
not
up.
busy, it's insane. It's insane today. I'll be sane by after 12:30. I'll be sane.
And for sacrificing your precious chanting time to tell us such so beautifully these simple principles about basically we need to unplug our mind, right? And if we know how important it is, then we would do it. It's not that difficult. And if we just create a good environment and get into a praying mindset, then we can be present for our 16 rounds. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
I
And
hope you
thank
have
you,
wonderful
everyone.
japa now. Wonderful japa
Yeah,
for the
thank
rest
you.
of your life.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. And as always, thank you, everyone, for attending. And we've just put the links in the chat where you can connect with practical spirituality on all of the different platforms, so that we can continue having beautiful talks like this and understanding how to progress in our spiritual journey. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Gauranga Nitananda.